Hello everyone, this is Raghu. Welcome to the Salesforce Trailhead video series. In this video, let's understand the basic concepts of Apex triggers and execute the triggers and see what happens when a trigger executes. So the triggers are basically you can say them as like kind of classes which gets executed whenever we try to insert a record or update a record or delete a record. So these are like certain set of actions that we can trigger on a specific object. So there are different objects, so we can specify a set of specific objects on which we can execute these triggers. So the next step here in this is like in the triggers module, we need to write all these codes again in the developer console. So the next thing that you need to do is like launch the trailhead playground and go to the developer console. So I'm in the developer console. Okay, so in this developer console, let's start writing our triggers. So the first trigger that we're going to write is like the session speaker trigger. This is like a send confirmation email. Okay, so this send confirmation email, what happens is whenever we execute, okay, or let's do one thing, let's start writing the trigger and execute. Let's notice like when exactly this trigger gets executed. Okay, so let's go back to the developer console. So in the developer console, we need to write a new trigger. In the previous scenario, we wrote an Apex class. Okay, now we are writing an Apex trigger. So understand that these two are different. So click on File, New, Apex trigger. And when we select the Apex trigger, basically it asks for two things. One is the name and the other one is the object. So the name that we are going to use here is send confirmation email. So send confirmation email, and it asks for an object on which we are trying to write this trigger on. So session underscore speaker underscore C is the object, and then click on submit. Okay, I guess like there is a space in there. Okay, so copy paste mistake. Let me remove the space, submit. Okay, a trigger has been created. Now let's copy the code and delete everything. Paste it. Now we have save it, file, and say save. So now this is like send a confirmation email. So what happens is this trigger gets executed after insert. So after inserting a record a session speaker record, it gets executed. So this trigger executes on different levels, like when we after we insert a record, or before insert, or after update, or before update, or delete. So in different cases it gets executed. In this scenario, it's basically after insert. So what exactly this does is the trigger.new is a kind of a placeholder that you can think of, which has all the values or the records, maybe the records which are being modified and being sent to the database either for insertion or deletion or update or whatever. So in this scenario, insert. So whenever there is a record which is being inserted, the new record, the trigger.new will hold that and can give it back to us. So this is a for loop where I'm trying to say hey, the session speaker object, I'm trying to get a session speaker object from this trigger and store it in session speaker IDs. So from that, like what exactly I'm trying to store, I'm trying to store the object.id, which means whoever is the speaker, and that speaker's ID, the session speaker's ID is what I'm trying to fetch, and I'm trying to store in this session speaker id list reference variable. So list is something like where we can store different types of data, and in here it is of type id, so it can store all the ids for us. So in here, like, all these are kind of self-explanatory. These are the queries that we have executed. So in this scenario, I'm trying to get the list of session speakers whose ids are associated or stored in this list. So once we get all those things and make sure that the list size is not zero. If it is greater than zero, it means like we have retrieved some records from the database. We are sending a confirmation email. So for sending that confirmation email, we have the address, everything we are pulling up from the database. And here what we are going to do is we are going to send the confirmation email with this subject, like the speaker confirmation and the first name, last name, and everything. So all this will be called by calling the email manager dot send email. So this trigger gets, understand that this trigger gets executed whenever we save a record, and this email manager dot send email, which is the apex class that we have written, will be called from the trigger to send the email. Okay, so in this scenario we have saved this trigger. So let's go ahead and test the trigger. So for testing the trigger, what I'm going to do is, let me go back to a speaker. So any speaker. Okay, let's assume that this is like David Lu. So for this guy, I'm going to update the email. So edit email, save, or you can click on the edit and you can enter the email ID and click on save. So I have updated the email ID for this user. So once this email ID is updated, so the next step that I'm going to do here is I'm going to a session or go to a related list, and for this user I'm going to associate a session. I say he is going to teach some Java basics, or maybe not Java basics. Let me say cancel, or maybe advanced apex. Okay, and click on save. So in here the user was the user is associated to a new session which is like an advanced apex and in this date. So once this record gets saved, our trigger gets executed. The trigger looks for this specific user. Okay, the user is David Lu and he has an email address associated with him, pulls up those details from the database and calls the email manager class, and it sends an email. Let's go back to our email. So did you notice here we just got an email confirmation. So the speaker confirmation: dear David, your session advanced apex is on 6:10 and at this specific time. Okay, so it means like, did you, if you see here, this advanced apex, all these details are being pulled from the database and we are able to get this email. So what happened in this scenario? A trigger got executed whenever a record is being saved. Okay, that's the first part. Now the next part, in the next part we will make sure that we will reject double booking. So let's assume that there is a scenario where a speaker has been already associated with a session at a specific time, and at the exact same time if there is a different session and if the user again tries to book for the same session, we need to reject his booking. So this code basically what it does is it tries to get all the session speakers and the related sessions, and then tries to check whether each and every speaker that we are having has any specific booking time, and if that booking time is equal to the new record that we are trying to save, then it says like, hey, the user is already associated with a session, and it throws an error message saying like the speaker is already booked at that time. Okay, so for that let me make some changes. Go back and let me make some changes here. So go to the session and I say Apex Basics. So this is at 6:10 at 10 a.m. Advanced Apex 6:10. Let me change the time here. This is also I'm gonna make it at 10 a.m. So both the sessions are at the same time. So let me say the Advanced Apex, it has a speaker already as David Liu. Okay. Now the Advanced Apex is at 10 a.m. Apex Basics is also at 10 a.m. So the next step, what I will do is I will go back and create the double booking trigger and execute this scenario. Okay. Once I execute this scenario, what happens is when I try to associate a new speaker to this session, it should throw me an error message. Okay. So go to the stuff and okay, rejected double booking. This is the trigger that we're going to write. File, new, Apex trigger. Make sure that there is no space at the end. And this is again on the session speaker object. Submit. Now go back and copy the existing code, trigger code. Delete the existing code and paste it and save. Boom, that's all. So this trigger should again get fired whenever we are trying to before insert and before update are the scenarios that we are trying to say. So whenever the user is trying to create a new record or create a new booking, or whenever he is trying to update an existing booking, it should fire and it should make sure that it should throw an error. So let's go back and test it. So session and Apex Basics session, let me associate. And just before I do that, just want to confirm that Advanced Apex has David Liu already, and Apex Basics, I want to at the same time I want to associate David Liu again. Speaker, okay, for David Liu he is 004. Okay, I guess there is something which did not work here. In the previous videos, we have executed the page layout. I guess the page layout did not save, or okay, let me check later. So 004, save. Did you notice here the speaker is already booked at this time, which means like the double booking, it is not allowing the double booking. So if I select a different speaker, let's assume that I want to select a different speaker 003, okay, and click on save. So I'm able to add that speaker, a different speaker, James Gosling, to this one. But if I again try to add David Liu with an ID of 004 and save it, see the speaker is already booked at this time and it cannot save it. Okay, so this is like double booking. So this is where we are trying to check the double booking has been taken care by this trigger. Okay. Okay, hope that is clear. So now let me just quickly go back and look, check for this option. Like whenever we say new, this speaker should show up the last name too, as per if we are following the Trailhead module. Let me quickly go back and duplicate this tab, or I guess like we need to go and go to the setup. Object manager, speaker, okay, search layout, and okay, I guess search results. Okay, we did not modify this, I guess. Sorry, I missed out in the old video, previous video. So click on the search result as edit. So on the search result, if you notice, like it just shows the speaker number only. So I just want to add the speaker name, the first name, last name, or whatever as per this trailhead, like it's like the last name was given. So I click on save. Okay, come back and Just refresh this page, or I say session and then go back to Apex Basics related list. Now if I try to say new, it should show me. Okay, looks weird. Okay, so the search results for the speaker must show the speaker number and the last name. Okay. Okay, I think it took some time to refresh. So as and when I just clicked on this search results, did you notice here it just shows the last names for the speakers? This is like a kind of it makes our search easy. We need not remember the names 004 or 3. We sorry the numbers. It just shows us the names, right? It would be easy for us to search. The same is the case if I search for David Liu and associate with him. Say the same is the case. This speaker is already booked at this time, and it will not allow me to book it. Okay, that brings us to the end of this Apex triggers, and let's verify the steps to make sure that if we have executed everything as per the trailhead or not. Okay, there we go, we got the 100 points, and in the next module we'll look into some line component. Okay, thank you, thanks for watching.